Discover the incredible moment when a millionaire unexpectedly changes a little girl's life forever. Jack wiped the sweat off his brow, finishing up a stubborn alternator. The familiar scent of motor oil wrapped around him like a second skin, grounding him in the sanctuary of his garage. Yet today felt different. The smooth purr of the unfamiliar luxury car that just rolled in shook him from his routine. A modern masterpiece accompanied by a rich heaviness, an aura of potential that felt both inviting and threatening. This wasn't just any customer. Richard, a millionaire, returned to his hometown, and now standing tall with his designer suit and polished shoes, moved through the dusty garage like a ghost of alien luxury. Jack couldn't shake off the tightened knot in his gut. That man likely had connections, resources, everything Jack didn't, and yet here he was, awkwardly aware of the gulf between their worlds. "Nice car you've got there," Jack muttered, attempting to mask his unease. "Thank you. It's my father's old dream, but I heard greasy hands make for good memories." Richard's smile was warm, but Jack couldn't help feeling exposed, vulnerable under Richard's scrutiny as he dissected their small talk. This was hard. It was a heavy choice to keep the doors of opportunity open for his daughter, Lily, whose fervent love for science often set her apart from the other kids at school. The image of her sparkling eyes dancing over his worn books was his driving force even as he battled disbelief in his own skills as a father. Would bringing someone like Richard into her life overshadow the grit of hard work Jack espoused? Lily was smart, wise beyond her years, and in this quaint Midwestern town, smart turned into oddball faster than Jack could blink. Before they knew it, Lily dashed into the garage, her backpack flinging dust into the air. "Dad, look what I found," she said, eyes alight, presenting a science kit she had squirreled away. A soft warmth washed over Jack until he saw Richard's rapt attention fixated on her brilliance, her awkwardness slipping unnoticed. Jack hesitated, a wave of something dark pooling in his heart. This was the connection that felt dangerous, one he feared might strip away the authenticity of his daughter's dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment hung heavy around them, like the tension bubbling before a storm. Jack felt Richard's gaze darting between him and Lily, the expectations flickering with barely contained enthusiasm that made him anxious. And then came the pivotal words. "You know, Lily, I could really help you with that science fair project." It was an innocent offer, a gesture cloaked in the guise of mentorship. But insecurities gnawed at Jack, a tapestry of his own past unraveling. Richard's nearly tangible wealth felt like a dagger aimed at the very soul of Jack's self-worth. If he let this millionaire into their lives, what would it mean for the scraped knuckles and opened-up engines they lived and thrived on? Dark shadows of long-standing family rifts clawed at the edges of Jack's heart. That unease spiraled into desperation, melding into a complex knot of feelings. Can he trust Richard to guide Lily toward greatness? Or would that connection bleed into their fragile bonds? The choice before him loomed larger than life, threatening to shatter the world Jack believed he built as Lily's safe haven. The stakes were high, and he stood on a precipice, trembling with the weight of aged fears. Would Richard's involvement spell success or doom for his daughter's untamed brilliance? The day truly was just beginning, and Jack inhaled deeply, ready for the storm that awaited. Jack's heart raced as the words hung in the air, the weight of Richard's offer pressing down on him like a cloud of impending rain. The garage, once a comforting refuge, felt suddenly claustrophobic, filled with the tension between parental instincts and the fear of losing control over his daughter's future. "No," Jack managed to say, though the word felt like a whisper against the thundercloud of his thoughts. You don't have to do that. The quiver of uncertainty in his voice betrayed his resolve, and he hated the way Richard's brow furrowed with mild disappointment. Why not? I see potential in her. She's got a spark. Richard's affirmation was genuine, the words seeming to fly past Jack's defenses. But instead of warming his heart, they only fueled the flames of his doubt. Was this what he had worked tirelessly to achieve for Lily? A gatekeeper of privilege, tearing down the walls he'd built against easy answers? Jack turned away, taking refuge in the familiar tools that hung on the garage wall, the lives of forgotten projects whispering their secrets. Each wrench and screwdriver was a reminder of humble determination, the legacy he hoped to pass to his daughter. Richard, standing among them like an intruder, threatened to rewrite their story with his silver spoon. Dad? Lily's voice, innocent and probing, broke through the weight of the moment. She was staring, wide-eyed, caught between her father's fear and Richard's enthusiasm. Why not? I want to learn from him. Jack felt something inside him twist. Lily had always expressed a longing for mentorship beyond the limited confines of school, the sterile world of textbooks and standardized tests. But how could he give her the experience she craved without swallowing his pride? He realized his denial was a barrier, isolating not only himself, but also Lily from the possibility of growth. A growing worry washed over him, like dark waves threatening to engulf the fragile sandcastle he had constructed around her dreams. Was he preparing her for a world that demanded more than he could offer? In that moment, Jack needed to strategize. If Richard had the resources and knowledge to propel Lily forward, then perhaps he could harness that potential without losing the core elements of what they stood for. What exactly do you have in mind, Richard? He braced himself, ready for a battle of wits. Richard grinned, relief flickering across his face. I can show her some advanced physics principles and mentor her through the project. It's all about exploration, pushing boundaries. Jack still felt resistance. But you don't understand. This isn't just about winning. It's about learning, growing. The heaviness in his chest made it hard to take the deeper leap. But isn't it also about access to opportunities? You're placing limits on what she can achieve out of fear. Richard's voice was calm, insightful, striking a nerve. Jack dismissed this truth with a wave of his hand, but it lingered, unsettled, forcing him to confront what he feared most, his own inadequacy. He sunk into contemplation, fingers gripping a wrench tightly enough to turn his knuckles white. He was wrestling not just with Richard but with himself, his father's lessons, the toil of honest work, and the echoes of past failures that lingered like shadows in his psyche. Fine, but let's set up boundaries. I want to know every detail of this project, Jack said finally, firming his resolve. He could offer his daughter the choice. Lily beamed, and in that radiant smile, so innocent and free of doubt, Jack saw himself diverging. He was one step closer to embracing both the world he had built and the untrodden paths that promised to unfurl ahead. As the tension shifted, Jack felt a flicker of hope amid his uncertainty. Could this be the beginnings of something greater? Slowly, the knots in his mind began to loosen. However, a deeper worry swept back in. He had made a decision, but unwittingly opened the door to challenges he hadn't anticipated. Now, let's see how you're going to handle it, Jack muttered under his breath, feeling the storm clouds still brewing in the distance. He needed to keep his eyes wide open for potential pitfalls. They could be lurking just out of view. The air crackled with unsteady possibilities as he glanced back at Richard and Lily. And then it struck him. The moment of truth was not just for Lily, but for him, too. He would have to confront his insecurities far more than he anticipated. As they began to discuss the specifics, Jack prepared himself for the massive leap of faith he just took, wondering if he had just set his life on an unpredictable trajectory. This was only the beginning. Is my daughter ready for this? He pondered. And the thought lingered, like the calm before the storm. As the days slipped away, Jack found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, each meeting with Richard pressing him to confront the tension that simmered below the surface. Lily embraced the new mentorship with enthusiasm, her eyes lit up with possibilities, and for the first time in ages, Jack felt an unfamiliar pang of envy mixed with pride. She was thriving in the world he feared, while he wrestled with an evolving dynamic he couldn't quite control. "Dad, can you come to the first project meeting?" Lily's request echoed down the hallway as she prepared for her weekly collaboration with Richard. It flared up a flicker of apprehension. Would Richard's influence overshadow his own role in Lily's journey? Jack hesitated, the weight of the answer heavy on his chest. "I'll be there. Just let me know when," he replied, his mind racing ahead, crafting scenarios where he could navigate the delicate balance of parental oversight and self-discovery. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't retreat into the shadows. It was time to engage, not just for Lily's sake, but for his own growth. The day arrived, and the look on Lily's face as she ushered him into Richard's workshop almost dispelled his lingering fears. This new environment was a stark contrast to their garage: high-tech gadgets, buzzing equipment, and walls adorned with advanced scientific posters made it feel like a portal to another dimension. Yet, as much as it excited Lily, the unfamiliarity unsettled Jack. "Welcome, Jack," Richard called, his voice booming with authority and ease. "Excited to have you here as we dive into the complexities of the project. I think Lily is really going to surprise us." Jack nodded, forcing a semblance of confidence as he took a seat, his gaze lingering on Lily, who was animatedly discussing her ideas. She thrived on that stage, feeding off Richard's enthusiasm, and Jack felt both admiration for her burgeoning independence and a creeping sense of inadequacy. "You mentioned wanting to set boundaries. Let's talk about how to make this a collaborative experience that respects your insights as well," Richard suggested, surprisingly attuned to Jack's silent struggle. Jack seized the moment, presenting his vision for the project. "It's essential that Lily learns the skills to think critically and creatively. I want her to understand the why behind every decision, not just the mechanics. Mentorship needs to be holistic." Richard nodded, eyes narrowing in thought. "Absolutely. But balancing that with her drive to excel will be key. We need to give her the challenges that stretch her without breaking her spirit. Are you comfortable with that?" Jack hesitated. "Challenge is good, but I worry about pushing too hard. I want her to explore but remain grounded." Richard leaned forward, the conflict of interest evident in his posture. "And it's that very tension that can produce innovation. Letting her take some risks will cultivate resilience, and isn't that vital for her future?" It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Jack recognized the truth. The world was larger than the parameters he had drawn. Perhaps Richard's experience could fortify the foundation Jack had built. But how much transformation was he ready to accept? As they discussed Lily's project, a shift began to settle within Jack. He saw Richard not just as an outsider, but as a possible ally in helping Lily become who she was meant to be. But each time he felt the urge to surrender control, a voice inside him resisted. Later, when they broke for lunch, Jack took Lily aside. "How do you feel about everything? Really?" he asked, trying to find the balance between curiosity and protectiveness. "I love it, Dad. Richard makes me think in ways I never have before. This is what I want. No, what I need." Her exuberance reignited the sparks of his own youthful ambition, and Jack couldn't help but smile. Yet, doubt still loomed, casting shadows over his acceptance. Was he doing the right thing? That night, as he lay awake, the anxiety crescendoed. He had taken a step into uncharted territory, but in doing so, he couldn't shy from the realization that ultimately, he was unraveling layers of himself too. He had to transform, if he was to navigate the complexities of letting go. Finally, just before sleep claimed him, a thought jolted into clarity. What if he stepped deeper into Richard's world? What if instead of competing, he collaborated? Jack had spent so long building protective walls. Maybe it was time to dismantle them, one cautious brick at a time. With that notion, Jack felt an unfamiliar current of resolve stitching together his conflicting emotions. Tomorrow would mark yet another turning point, and he stood on the precipice of change. The time had come to face his fears fully, not just for Lily, but for himself. With dawn's light still a distant promise, he wondered, would he have the courage to open the door wider, even as he feared what lay beyond it? Jack awoke the next morning with a blend of anticipation and anxiety swirling within him. The sunlight crept through the blinds, illuminating the remnants of his unresolved thoughts from the night before. Today was more than just another day. It was an opportunity for growth, not just for Lily, but for himself as well. The thought of facing Richard again filled him with an unsettling mixture of eagerness and trepidation. As he prepared for the project meeting, Jack looked in the mirror and scrutinized himself. The lines etched on his face spoke of an unease that tightened his gut. This wasn't merely an encounter with Richard. It was a confrontation with his own fears of inadequacy. Would he rise to the challenge or stumble under the weight of his doubts? He arrived at Richard's workshop, walking through the door with a resolve he scarcely recognized. The vibrant energy within the room seemed to pulse with possibility, as Lily engaged animatedly with Richard and the other team members. The scene ignited a flicker of pride in him, a recognition of how far she had come, but alongside it, the gnawing insecurity reared its head again. "Good morning, Jack. Ready to dive in?" Richard's voice sliced through the chatter, and Jack nodded, feeling the weight of scrutiny from seasoned mentors around him. They were expecting him to contribute, to validate Lily's budding independence, yet all he could think about was his own wavering authority. "Absolutely. I've been reflecting on our last conversation," Jack began, channeling the resolve he had mustered earlier. "I think it's important we focus on allowing Lily to take some risks in this project. It could foster her growth and help her see her potential, beyond what we anticipate." Richard leaned back slightly, surprised but intrigued. "Interesting perspective. It sounds like you're ready to step into a more collaborative role. That takes courage." The acknowledgement buoyed Jack's confidence, but he quickly quashed the flicker of hope surging within him. Courage or folly? Encouraging risk could just as easily lead to failure, and what then? Would he be responsible for a misstep in Lily's developmental journey? Yet, as he watched her, fiercely asserting her ideas, he felt an ember of something new ignite, a burgeoning acceptance of his own limitations as a father. "Let's let her guide us, then. We can create an environment that facilitates exploration," Richard suggested, and the team nodded in agreement. Jack observed closely as Lily exchanged glances with Richard, the two of them immersing themselves in planning. A pang of jealousy flared up again. Was this the collaboration he envisioned? Or had he become relegated to the sidelines? His anxiety wrestled with a curious understanding that growth sometimes begged sacrifice, the sacrifice of control. During the brainstorming session, an idea ignited in his mind. "Maybe we could create a pitch challenge that outlines the risks and rewards of her project. It would teach her to weigh decisions critically," he proposed. Richard's eyes glimmered with approval. "That could work. It teaches accountability and foresight." Lily glanced at her father, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "That's brilliant, Dad. I didn't think of that." With those words, Jack felt a powerful shift, as if releasing a tightly coiled spring within himself. In stepping back, he allowed himself to be an active participant rather than a controlling figure. The uncertainty that had plagued him began to recede, replaced by a strange sense of camaraderie with Richard, and more importantly, with Lily. As they continued to map out the project, Jack's internal narrative began to evolve. He was learning to redefine his role, not just as a father, but as a mentor navigating uncharted waters alongside his daughter. With every proposal Lily made, he found himself less focused on the fear of losing authority and more devoted to empowering her journey. Yet, lurking beneath this newfound clarity, remained a voice of doubt. What if this collaboration led Lily down paths he wasn't prepared for? What was he truly willing to give up? The recognition that growth often came cloaked in discomfort pressed heavily against him. As they wrapped up for the day, Richard placed a reassuring hand on Jack's shoulder. You have what it takes to guide her without holding her back. Trust yourself, Jack. Leaving the workshop, Jack's heart raced. He realized he was on the brink of discovering a new version of himself, one who would not just navigate the landscape of his daughter's ambitions, but also rediscover his own passions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jack pondered the question that had emerged. What parts of himself had he yet to explore, and how far was he willing to go to find them? Tomorrow would challenge him in unforeseen ways, but would he summon the courage needed to fully embrace this evolution? The morning sun broke through the windows, casting a soft glow in Jack's kitchen, a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling inside his head. He brewed a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the space, yet it did little to settle the unease stirring within him. Today, he was to present the pitch challenge idea to the larger team, a move that could either propel Lily's project forward or expose him to further scrutiny. The stakes felt higher than ever. As he sipped his coffee, Jack's mind drifted to his own childhood, reflections resurfacing of moments that made him feel both invincible and vulnerable. Memories of his father's unwavering expectations weighed on him, lighting a fire of determination. Yes, he wanted to lift up his daughter, but he also wanted to break the cycle of pressure that had so often stifled him. This time would be different. This was about empowerment, not control. When Jack arrived at the office, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. The boardroom was lined with glossy presentation boards, a tapestry of ideas and ambitions that filled him with a strange mix of pride and apprehension. He felt the tension radiate from his colleagues, their expectations palpable. They believed in Lily's potential, yet here he was, teetering on the edge between being her advocate and his own fears of failure. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started, Richard's voice commanded the room, drawing all eyes. Jack took a deep breath and shifted in his seat, feeling more like an imposter than a father with valuable insight. As he listened to the team discuss their aspirations, he thought of how easy it would have been to lean back and let Lily shine on her own. Instead, he opted for engagement. There was too much at stake. When Jack's turn arrived, he felt the weight of every gaze upon him, each expecting him to channel the father they admired. Today, I want to propose a pitch challenge centered around risk assessment, Jack began, feeling the words tumble out, wrestled between nerves and the desire to reframe their approach. It's about allowing Lily to explore her ideas while cultivating a sense of accountability. It's not just about what she can achieve. It's about understanding the landscape of her decisions. Richard nodded, a flicker of pride evident in his expression. That's insightful, Jack. We need this kind of critical thinking. Encouraged, Jack pressed on, sharing guidelines for the challenge. As he spoke, he saw Lily's eyes brightening, confidence spilling over as she envisioned herself stepping into this new role. Yet, amidst this encouraging scene, an insidious doubt slithered through his heart. Did they truly believe he had the authority to guide her? The question gnawed at him, the uncertainty threatening to undermine everything he was building for her. So, what should we do if she faces failure? One of the team members interjected, their tone direct. How will she learn from it? The question hung heavy in the air, taunting Jack. He wrestled with it, searching for an answer that was simultaneously honest and encouraging. Failure should be seen not as an end but as part of growth. It's about giving her space to explore, knowing that the lessons learned are invaluable. As he concluded, a silence enveloped the room. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. He had shared a piece of himself, offering not just a plan but a deeper understanding of his daughter's journey. The team began to discuss logistics, and for the first time that day, Jack noticed glimpses of approval on their faces. not just towards Lily, but towards him as well. By the meeting's end, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Stevie from marketing, always an outspoken skeptic, approached Jack, enthusiasm flickering in her eyes. "You really brought something unique to the table today, Jack. You should trust yourself more. It's clear you're on this journey with Lily." Stevie's words bathed him in warmth, a validation he had desperately yearned for. The sense of camaraderie that formed felt like a turning point, not just for Lily's project, but for Jack himself. As he returned home that evening, surrounded by the familiar chaos of family life, Jack felt different. The constructive feedback from the team echoed in his mind. They had seen him. They'd recognized his potential, and in their acceptance, he began to feel a negligible measure of the fears that had once plagued him start to dissipate. However, as he tucked Lily into bed, a new resolve gripped him. He wouldn't simply be a passive observer in her life. No, he would step fully into the role of ally and mentor, embracing the discomfort that came with it. What lay ahead excited him, yet a lingering uncertainty remained. Was he truly prepared to confront the shadows of his own insecurities head-on? Tomorrow promised more challenges, but in that moment of vulnerability, Jack realized one fundamental truth. True evolution comes from facing one's deepest fears. With the moonlight filtering through the window, he whispered a soft promise into the night. It was time to redefine what mentorship meant to him. What awaited in this journey might just change everything. Jack awoke the next day, energy coursing through him as he prepared for another day that felt monumental yet undefined. He knew that the success of the pitch challenge required not only a well-constructed plan, but also the fortitude to guide Lily through the inevitable uncertainties that lay ahead. The conversation around failure lingered in his mind, transforming into a personal mantra. Failures could provide the most vital lessons. In the office, the intensity felt palpable. Everyone was aligning themselves for the impending challenges. Jack could see it in their body language. They brimmed with excitement and anxiety. He walked into the break room, pouring himself another cup of coffee, grateful for the familiar ritual amidst the chaos. For him, coffee had become a metaphorical shield, warming him against the lingering chill of doubt. Stevie's encouraging words echoed in his mind, propelling him toward a sudden realization. He hadn't just validated himself in that meeting. He had recognized a part of himself that he often relegated, the part capable of insightful leadership. This was also his opportunity to deepen that capability instead of hesitating. With a new perspective, he found himself reviewing his notes and adapting the lessons he had planned for Lily. He envisioned a framework that would enable her to embrace risk without fear of judgment. It was about ensuring she felt supported regardless of the outcomes. After a few hours of hyper-focused work, Jack summoned his courage and approached Richard. He felt the weight of this decision pressing down on him, each step heavy with apprehension, but also determination. "Can I get your input on some additional ideas for the challenge?" he asked, his voice steady. Richard's brows lifted, clearly intrigued. "Absolutely, Jack. What do you have in mind?" As Jack laid out his thoughts, the conversation drifted from logistics to the philosophy behind mentorship, reflecting his intent to create a learning environment where both Lily and her colleagues could thrive. Richard nodded, the interest on his face turning into approval as he whispered, "You're on to something big here." Warmed by the acknowledgement, Jack felt empowered, yet anxious, as if he were standing at the edge of an uncharted cliff, ready to leap. Could he truly be a guide not only for Lily, but also for the other young professionals who needed this same support? That afternoon, Jack met Lily for their designated brainstorming session. Her bright eyes lit up the room as she slid into the seat across from him. "Dad, I've been thinking about the project. If I do find things that don't work, can I still get credit for trying?" Her question hit him like a ton of bricks, echoing the misgivings buried deep within him. "Absolutely," he stated, catching her inquisitive gaze. "It's all part of the process, and we'll learn together. Remember, the challenge is also about growth, not just success." Jack watched her contemplate the depth of his words, and in that moment, he felt a subtle shift within himself, a desire to foster this same tenacity within her. They dove into exploring not just the project ideas, but handling conflicts and uncertainties head-on. Yet with this new confidence emerged an unforeseen confrontation. The vulnerability of being exposed, both as a father and as a mentor. The thought gnawed at him. How much of his own past wounds would he have to confront to guide Lily effectively? Would she stumble under the pressure akin to his childhood, or could he create a new narrative? As the sun began its descent, Jack returned home, overwhelmed, but purposeful. He navigated through the familiar atmosphere, aware of the realization that growth often involves wrestling with discomfort. In that chaos of home, it dawned on him. He held the key not just to Lily's future, but his own evolution. When he finally sat down to reflect, a surge of resolve washed over him. Engagement with growth. This was not merely a pathway for Lily, but a necessary journey for himself. Embracing the burden of mentorship required him to face more than just his daughter's challenges. It meant confronting the scar tissue of his upbringing. A quiet introspection filled the room, and as Jack processed these conflicting emotions, his phone buzzed with a message from Stevie. "How's it going today? Looking forward to seeing how the challenge unfolds." Jack's fingers lingered over the screen, a smirk creeping onto his face as he contemplated drafting a fuller response. He had much to share, but could he articulate how this felt, the blend of excitement and fear? It was time to confront not just his mentoring role, but also the shadows that lingered, shadows that whispered he might not be enough. He pressed send, feeling his heart race with both fear and resolve. As he absorbed the chaos around him, he knew the time had come to face the truths he'd avoided for too long. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of a confrontation, an understanding that mentorship, true mentorship, transcended fabricating a perfect narrative. The time had come to face not just Lily's challenges, but his own unresolved fears. The next chapter beckoned, promising confrontation, but perhaps the solace of evolution. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as Jack sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the wall. His thoughts churned in a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation, each memory reminding him of his past inadequacies. Today, he was set to meet with Lily and the team to discuss their project's next steps. It was more than just a meeting, though. It represented a pivotal moment in his life, one that could redefine his approach to mentorship. As he dressed, the mirror reflected not just his external form, but the internal struggle that had begun to brew. Who was he becoming? As a leader? As a father? The duality of those roles started to weave a complicated tapestry of expectations. Today would test his resolve, and the stakes felt impossibly high. Arriving at the office, the buzz of the environment jarred him back into focus, yet it was more than the typical hustle and bustle. Today, there was an air of unity and purpose. People seemed more connected to their tasks than he had seen before. Jack's heart raced. Was that energy transmuting to him? He needed it. Gathering in the conference room, he watched as his team took their places. Lily slid into the chair next to him, the innocence of her enthusiasm almost palpable. Her eyes sparkled, a reflection of the hope Jack desperately clung to. "I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday," she began, unwrapping a notebook. Each page revealed hastily scrawled ideas. The innocence of her approach was a stark contrast to the weight of self-doubt that hovered over Jack. "Let's hear it," he encouraged, feeling a tether of excitement attached to his heart. As she presented her thoughts, Jack realized she was channeling his earlier lessons without fear. "Maybe instead of focusing on the fails, we should look at what didn't work and find what can be improved," she suggested, excitement threading her words together. Jack's face lit up. "Exactly. It's not a failure if we're learning. You're leading the charge here." Her face shone with pride, and for the first time, Jack felt a sense of validation wash over him. Could this be the moment where all his efforts in reframing success through failure finally bore fruit? But the exhilaration was short-lived. A nagging voice in the back of his mind echoed the fear, the skepticism of his capabilities. Would their concept resonate with those outside this room? Jack found himself at a crossroad, confronted by the deeper shadow of his own insecurities. During the discussion, Lily challenged an idea Jack suggested, expressing why it might not be the most effective route. Normally, such pushback would have unsettled him, but today, it ignited a spark of realization. This was the essence of mentorship, creating an environment where ideas could clash and evolve, where no voice went unheard, especially not hers. He compelled himself to embrace this debate as an opportunity. "You're right, Lily. Let's refine that." The dialogue continued, with Jack intentionally stepping back to let other voices rise, realizing his role was not to dominate but to facilitate growth. With every contribution from the team, Jack felt the chains of self-doubt unravel just slightly, enough to create space for collective creativity to bloom. As the meeting came to a close, the energy shifted in the room, each member visibly inspired and excited to carry their ideas forward. Jack breathed deeply, pride welling within him. Perhaps today had shifted something essential, the realization that mentorship is a two-way street, an exchange rather than a hierarchy. But as the team dispersed, Jack lingered, staring at the whiteboard filled with ideas and threads of possibilities. A gnawing tension returned, whispering of the unresolved ghosts he still needed to face, especially concerning his own experiences with failure. Exiting the office, Jack felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, but this time it was laced with determination. He turned his phone over in his hand, contemplating reaching out to Stevie, to confide in him only partly about the inner conflicts bubbling beneath the surface. In that moment, he understood that his journey was just beginning. The path of becoming a mentor would also require him to confront his own past. Suddenly, the idea of facing his fears did not seem like an obstacle, but a necessary step toward evolution. Jack took a moment, looking out over the busy street alive with motion and opportunity. Tomorrow would be crucial. It would be the day he'd not only continue to teach, but also to reveal parts of himself he had long since buried. Would he have the courage to confront what lay beneath and emerge transformed? The uncertainty loomed, but maybe that was the very heart of growth. The willingness to face the uncomfortable truths, to acknowledge that the mentor he aspired to be was tied intricately to the wounds he had once thought held him back. As he walked away, a resolve settled within him. The time had come to pull back the curtain on his own narrative, and in doing so, fully embrace the role of mentor, not just for Lily, but for himself too. The next day dawned with a chill in the air, a stark contrast to Jack's inner warmth. As he navigated through the morning, a fire flickered within him, a palpable urgency to confront his fears head-on. The delicious aroma of coffee brewed through the office, but today, it felt more like a catalyst than a comfort. It was time to unravel the layers he had built over the years. Stepping into the conference room, Jack was determined to cultivate an environment ripe for vulnerability, both for himself and his team. The room felt different. The whiteboard was a cacophony of aspirations, echoing the optimism of yesterday's fruitful meeting. Yet, beneath this vibrant display, an oppressive weight appeared to loom over him, his unaddressed failures and hidden narratives pressing down hard. Lily arrived early, her enthusiasm unwavering. "Guess what? I have some new ideas for the project," she quipped, brimming with energy. Her eagerness, however, triggered a reminder of Jack's swirling doubts. Could he keep pace with the vision she had for their shared mission? "That's great, Lily. Let's hear them," he replied, masking the tension knotting in his stomach. As she shared her thoughts, Jack found himself drifting, grappling with the significance of his impending conversation with Stevie. It felt like a digital clock endlessly ticking down. The pressure of unconfessed emotions and experiences bubbling beneath his stoic exterior, each tick a reminder that he needed to be honest, both with his team and himself. After Lily concluded her pitch, Jack seized the moment. "You know, I realized something the other day. In order to lead, you need to understand where you've stumbled," he began, his pulse quickening. Lead by example. I think I need to share more of my own journey with you all. The room fell silent, tension whispering through the air. Jack's heart raced. It was a significant leap. But his truth, a mixture of shame and regret, could also serve as a powerful illustration of growth. He trusted this team, and though part of him ached at the thought of bearing his vulnerabilities, there was also an unyielding conviction that the energy of authenticity would ignite a deeper connection among them. Jack took a deep breath and continued. I've faced my share of failures. They've actually defined much of who I am. Like during a project early in my career, I let pride cloud my judgment, leading to a disaster that impacted others. I thought I was invincible, but reality hit hard. He could see their eyes widen, surprise mingling with curiosity. I believe in learning from failures, he pressed forward, emboldened as he gazed around the room. But I realize that teaching without sharing my own experiences won't help you grow. Lily leaned forward, her interest piqued. But how did you move forward from that? Did it change how you approach projects now? The question resonated, reflecting not just interest, but a desire to evolve through adversity. Absolutely, Jack responded, buoyed by their engagement. It taught me that leading is about being real, not just presenting achievements. It's about transparency. With each word, he felt another piece of the facade dissolve. Every time I held back, I restricted not only myself but my whole team. As he concluded, Jack's newfound clarity sparked a cascade of ideas within the team. Discussions blossomed, intertwining their aspirations with Jack's revelations. Their enthusiasm ignited further, and he felt invigorated. He was growing not only as a mentor, but as a man who was finally staring down the ghosts of his past. Yet apprehension lingered. Would Stevie understand? Would he be receptive to this version of Jack, the one who was stripping away layers to emerge vulnerable? Just outside the office door, Jack realized it was a test of trust, not just in others, but in himself too. The room transformed as they exchanged daring ideas, their momentum reaching exhilarating heights. But amidst the creativity, Jack's internal battle continued, intertwining pride with fear. He knew tomorrow would be monumental. It would involve more than just sharing a lesson. It would be a reckoning. Would he truly have the strength to confront his past with Stevie and emerge empowered rather than diminished? The question haunted him, a fine line woven between courage and reluctance that he could no longer ignore. Tomorrow awaited, and with it, the moment that could irrevocably shape not just his mentorship, but his very identity. As the dawn crept timidly into the office, Jack felt a fusion of anticipation and dread. The previous day's revelations lingered in his mind, clinging like a shadow. He had stepped into the light, unearthing his vulnerabilities before his team. Yet the looming conversation with Stevie felt like a dark storm cloud hovering over his resolve. Today, the office hummed with a frantic energy, a stark contrast to Jack's inner turmoil. He shuffled through emails, each one threatening to distract him from the focus he so desperately needed. The clock ticked away, echoing his growing unease. He had opened himself to his team, but the true test remained, unveiling that same rawness to Stevie. In between tasks, Jack found himself questioning what vulnerability truly meant. Was it a show of strength or weakness? He thought back to yesterday, how his admission had ignited sparks amongst his peers. Each question they posed felt like a lifeline, deepening the synergy they had created. Yet Stevie was different. Their relationship had history, marked by unfulfilled expectations and mistrust. Jack steeled himself. He needed to approach this with clarity and purpose. The time crept forward until finally, it was nearly noon. The break room buzzed with laughter, but Jack felt isolated, wrapped tightly in his thoughts. A motivational poster on the wall read, "Embrace change." But Jack's journey was far more complex than that. Change was not simply an embrace. It was often a battle against an unseen foe. He decided to revisit his notes, hoping to compose his thoughts. As he jotted down points of discussion, A memory flickered into view. His first project at the start of his career. The excitement mixed with pure terror, as he recalled standing in front of a crowd of expectant faces, his knees shaking. The successful execution felt like a fleeting moment, overshadowed by the subsequent failures that had followed. Jack pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on what mattered. He needed to show Stevie that vulnerability could be an asset, a cornerstone of leadership rather than a shortcoming. But how would he articulate this? Would Stevie see the lessons Jack had gleaned from his darkest moments? Or would he merely see a man riddled with doubts? He paced back and forth, the office buzz fading away. The looming confrontation reminded him of stepping onto a stage. The fear of failure intertwined with the potential for growth. Every fiber of his being urged him to retreat. This is safer, easier. But he couldn't afford that now. There was too much at stake. It was not just his own path, but the understanding of what it truly meant to lead with authenticity. Lily swung into the room, her bright smile cutting through his introspection. "Jack, are you ready for this afternoon's meeting?" she asked, the enthusiasm in her voice a stark contrast to Jack's internal struggle. "Yeah, just going over a few things," he replied, though his heart raced with anxiety. "Don't worry too much, you've got this," she encouraged, waving as she left him to his thoughts. Jack inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her words lift a fraction of his apprehension. Maybe it was about trust. Not just the trust of others, but trusting himself to own his narrative. He couldn't rewrite the past, but he could frame it differently. Move from a place of shame to one of shared experience. As the day dragged on, each minute felt like a preparation for an impending storm. Jack's pulse quickened at the thought of his conversation with Stevie, and finally, the time came. He stood outside of Stevie's office, heart thundering, and knocked hesitantly. The door creaked open, and Jack's breath hitched in his throat. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. The moment that could either break or make the path he had begun to carve for himself. "Come in, Jack," Stevie's voice called, layers of authority and familiarity intertwining. Jack felt an intense flicker of fear blend with determination. As he stepped into the office, he grasped onto the notion that real growth often demanded confronting uncomfortable truths. The stakes were high, and Jack's stomach churned, knowing he was tiptoeing into uncharted territory. Would vulnerability bring them closer together, or unravel their professional bond in ways he hadn't foreseen? The question echoed in his mind as he prepared to speak. But what Jack didn't know was that this confrontation would lead to revelations that neither of them anticipated, shifting the dynamics of their relationship forever. As Jack settled into the chair across from Stevie, the weight of his unspoken thoughts pressed down like an anchor in his chest. The familiar buzz of office life faded into the background as he focused on the task ahead. This wasn't just about sharing his past mistakes. It was about forging a new path for their relationship, allowing both vulnerability and authenticity to define their future interactions. "Thanks for meeting with me," Jack said, keeping his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I wanted to talk about some personal things that I think have affected my perspective as a mentor." Stevie's brow raised, curiosity peeking in his eyes. "I'm listening. What's on your mind?" Jack took a deep breath, summoning all the courage he had gathered. "Over the years, I've experienced failures that made me question my abilities, not only as a professional but also as a father. I've always thought of mentorship as guiding someone without revealing my own flaws, but it's clear now that to truly lead, I need to be open about my experiences." The air in the room shifted, tension thickening as Jack continued. "I realize that the lessons I've learned through failure are significant, and it's essential to share that. By holding back, I've limited my ability to connect with others." Stevie's expression softened as he listened intently, surprised by Jack's willingness to confront his past. "That's a profound realization. It takes a lot of strength to admit that. I've spent so long trying to protect myself from judgment that I've nearly suffocated the part of me that wants to grow and evolve, Jack admitted, his voice thickening with emotion. I fear that by exposing my vulnerabilities, I'll lose credibility or put Lily at a disadvantage when she needs strong leadership. But I see now that embracing those vulnerabilities can serve as a bridge for learning. Absolutely, Stevie said, leaning forward, his voice warm. It's about collaboration, which you've already started to cultivate in the team. Vulnerability fosters trust and creates an environment where everyone feels safe to share and innovate without fear of judgment. Jack nodded, a flicker of conviction igniting within him. I've been prioritizing control over connection, thinking I had to hold everything together. But it's apparent that sharing my journey could empower the team, especially Lily. Have you thought about how this affects your role in her project? Stevie asked gently. Yes, Jack admitted, his heart racing. I've realized that stepping back to empower her doesn't weaken my involvement. It enhances it. It shows that leadership is about guiding through shared experiences, not authoritative control. The two exchanged glances that acknowledged the significance of Jack's transformation. There was an unspoken agreement that this was a turning point, not only for Jack and Lily, but also for Stevie and their working relationship. Stevie smiled, the warmth in his gaze radiating encouragement. You're already on the right track, Jack. Being authentic will elevate the mentorship you provide. You're leading by definition, but deepening that impact by allowing your own vulnerabilities to shine through will enhance your credibility. With every ounce of fear diminishing, Jack felt a surge of confidence. The conversation had transformed from a potential confrontation into a moment of genuine connection and shared understanding. Thank you, Stevie. I genuinely appreciate your support. It's refreshing to know I'm not alone in this journey. Remember, vulnerability is strength, Stevie said, a smile breaking across his face. Let's work together to build an environment where failing forward is not just tolerated, but encouraged. You and Lily have what it takes to succeed. As Jack walked out of Stevie's office, an unexpected lightness filled his chest. He felt liberated, recognizing that embracing his past was not just about confessing failure, but was also a pathway to understanding and growth. The unease that had defined his thoughts faded into a backdrop of resolve. With newfound clarity, Jack stepped into the next challenge, not just encouraging his daughter to embrace her journey, but also letting his concealed insecurities breathe, intertwining their narratives. Each unguarded moment unveiled a shared history, paving the way for a foundation built on honesty and authenticity. That evening, as he sat at the kitchen table with Lily, her sketches spread before them as colorful manifestations of her ideas, Jack felt an ember of hope ignite. You know, Lily, he began, his voice steady and intentional. There's something I want to share, and it's important that you hear it. Everyone makes mistakes, including me. But those mistakes are opportunities for us to learn. Lily looked up, her big eyes filled with curiosity. Even you, Dad? You always seem so in control. A heartwarming chuckle erupted. Believe it or not, I was once just as unsure as you may feel now. I've faced challenges that felt daunting, but overcoming them shaped who I am. He witnessed her brows knitting together, a moment of revelation forming behind her gaze. So mistakes are good? She asked, her voice laced with wonder. Jack nodded, gratitude washing over him. Exactly. They help us develop resilience, and every step you take is part of growing into who you're meant to be. Lily's smile illuminated the room, a realization dawning in both of them that they could navigate their paths together, nurturing ambition through authenticity, their individual growth melding into a powerful partnership. As they dove into the project, the playful banter of brainstorming filled the space, an embrace of joyful exploration, often punctuated by shared laughter. Jack felt his heart swell with pride, witnessing Lily evolve into the vibrant, confident innovator he always knew she could be. For the first time in years, Jack felt a solid confidence welling up inside. a recognition that he was not just a father or mentor, but a participant in their shared journey of growth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for Jack, embracing vulnerability and nurturing connection would no longer be fears to grapple with, but rather tools to wield in forging stronger bonds. He was invested in his daughter's journey, while also remaining committed to embracing his own, the strongest legacy he could offer her. And with that clarity, he conquered the depths of his fears and emerged not only a better father, but a true mentor, grounded in authenticity and fueled by shared aspirations. Step into your truth today. Embrace the journey of growth and mentorship, and uncover the infinite possibilities it brings. So don't wait any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative ending. You need to subscribe now, because this is the moment to show your support.